Hello and welcome. Today we have Adam Whitney joining us, and I am so excited to dive in and hear his story. Adam is a husband and father, an active duty Marine, a real estate investor and syndicator, a CEO, and a retail agent enabler. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that one. Adam, thank you for joining us today and being willing to share your story and your experience with us. Did I get everything? Did I miss? You wear a lot of hats.
I'm sure you did. Well, first, thanks for having me. My favorite statistic is I'm hitting my 18th year of marriage this year.
Congratulations. That is a very important one and not easy to come by.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think to start things off, I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about your background, your story, kind of how you found real estate and, doing what you're doing, still being on active duty. Like, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, I joined the service in 2004 and I was just a young adult trying to find my way, and very fortunate. It's an important part of my story because it really set me on a path with a set of core values and what that really meant to be, a principle-based person. And that's really helped me kind of throughout my entire life. In 2008, I was PCSing. For those who don't know what that means, it's when you move from military station to station. So permanent change of station. I was moving from California to Virginia, and across the drive, we listened to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I had been fascinated with real estate. I just didn't really ever dive into it. That was the first kind of educational piece I did. I literally did nothing with that information for a few years. I knew I wanted to do something. So when I went to my enlisted officer program back in Michigan, and I was in Ann Arbor, I tried to buy a house. It was a short sale in 2011. So you got to remember what's going on at that time. Like, houses were super cheap. And I squabbled over a couple $1,000s, and I didn't end up closing on it. Didn't really know what I was doing. I could have bought it for $99,000. It has since sold 2 or 3 times at $299,000, $300,000 and plus. So would have been a great play if I would have just dove in and did it. Fast forward another 6 years, 2017, I get a little more serious. I get in a better financial position. I get really healthy financially, and I purchased my first house, and I'm just become hooked at that point into real estate. Didn't necessarily know what niche of real estate. I looked at multifamily, I looked at single family, I looked at rentals and flipping. I was just kind of inundated with information at the time. And as I started to educate and network, I found some turnkey rentals. I bought some turnkey rentals. I invested in some limited partnership multifamily deals. I almost joint ventured on a 42 unit apartment that fell apart in due diligence. And at that time, I had realized that multifamily was kind of slow for me. Wasn't the best fit for me at that time, and I started to focus more on single family. And then the rest is kind of history. Since then, I've done over 300 flips, and I've now bought syndicated a 134 unit, and we're under contract to syndicate a 90 unit. And I have a title company. I'm vertically integrated with the retail side, coaching company, equity, and a virtual staffing company as well. So I just got really addicted to not just real estate, but business as well.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that you bought your first house in 2017. And then now here we are, 6, 7 years later, and you've come quite a long way since then. Can you go a little bit deeper into maybe some of the key points, key steps along the way, whether it was a person that you met or an event that you attended, or were there any things that really accelerated your transition from one place to the next?
Yeah, for sure. I think like most people, I started listening to all the podcasts. So in 2017, I bought that house on a VA loan. I didn't buy my next house until 2019.
Okay.
Okay. And then I had started to sharpen my skills. What I found though is like I couldn't get stuck in just learning, so I just dove into a few different things and I kind of iterated over time. So I bought the house in 2017. I lived in it for a while and I rented it out when I left. I bought a couple turnkey rentals, a few units, 2 or 3 units in a Midwestern market. Realized that I can't fund every single rental with 25% down and have any velocity on my money. So I went to Flip Hacking Live in 2020, October of 2020, and my goal was to learn 2 things, and that was how to find off-market deals at a discount so that I could refi money out or I could flip those houses and have the money move faster. And then the second goal was to raise private capital, which you have to have there is a balance between, going out and raising money and getting deals and having experience. So it's not as clean as you would hear on the internet. You've got to kind of practice both skills at the same time and work through and solve problems until you've built up some kind of, I guess, some callus on the real estate side and you've proven that you're a good operator.
Nice. So you mentioned needing more velocity. So what was it that you got from Flip Hacking Live that helped you kind of take things to the next level?
Yeah, well, I think it's a couple things similar. I've had this experience a couple times in my life where you see people or you hear people and it feels so distant. Like, how are they already there? It doesn't even make sense. I can't imagine that level of success just yet. I feel so stuck. I had that happen in my military career, and I was enlisted and I went to a place where they taught officers and I got around those people. Number one, they were amazing. Number two, there was belief. I was like, man, if these guys can do it, I can definitely do this. Right. So that was like the first experience where I really excelled at something and had belief that I could do something I thought otherwise I couldn't. When I went to Flip Hacking Live, it was the same thing. There were all these investors who are getting up on the stage and telling you exactly how they were doing it. And they were doing 100 deals a year. I couldn't even wrap my mind around that. And I was like, there's no way that I can't do that. If they're doing it, I can surely do it. So I took the leap of faith and joined that community. And, that community gave me literally all the tools to go out and find my own way and be able to do deals at a scale that I thought was acceptable for me and getting the velocity I needed.
That's awesome. You just hit on like so many things. Like, let's see if we can break this down. So I think one of the things you just said that really resonates with me and is in line with something that I was reading earlier this week. Just this idea that like, if you can see it, then you can be it. And it was in the context of like visualization and in terms of like my own practice of like meditation and trying to, affirmations and what are the things that I could be doing to sort of get out of my own way sometimes. And that idea keeps coming up. Like, if you can see it, then you can do it. And I think sometimes it's really easy for us to get stuck because we can't imagine what something can be. But then you get around people that are actually doing it and you see that it's possible. And it's like, oh, wow, like that is something that can happen. And, and you start to figure out like how you can put yourselves in the same rooms and in the same places and start learning from people who are doing what you want to do or, where you want to be in life. So I think that's really awesome. You also mentioned along the lines of that community. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the things that you personally have done to find community with people that are doing what you want to do?
Yeah, I think I know there's a lot of information, a lot of groups you can join. I just became, and a lot of them are on the other side of a little bit of money. You have to put a little bit of skin in the game to get in these rooms. And like many, I was like, I don't know, that's like, that costs money. But I saw the people in that room and I knew from past experience in the military, if I got in the room with the people who were performing at a high level, it would help me raise my game. And when I went to Flip Hacking Live, it was 2020. It was virtual. COVID had happened, so I had some free time, and I told my wife, I said, "Hey, I'm going to spend money and join this group." She's like, "You're insane." I'm like, "Yes, but trust me, if I join this group, I think it's going to take me to where I want to go, because you really are. It's part doing and it's part belief, right? So you get in any of these groups, they give you a blueprint. It's up to you to do it. Once you see the blueprint, you start to get belief. Once you start to do, it's hard, it's challenging. You start to overcome those challenges, your belief goes exponential, and then you start to see success. So for me, that's what it was. I joined the 7-figure flipping community, and I also joined a veteran and military community that has had a great impact on my life too.
Awesome. You mentioned talking to your wife about spending this money to invest in you. Really, ultimately, when we're joining these different masterminds and groups and trying to get education and build our skill set, it's an investment in ourselves. Can you talk a little bit more about, not necessarily that conversation, but like kind of how that went, and the importance of maybe like your why and how that ties in with your family and your long-term goals for your family?
Yeah. So particularly at this point, we had gotten financially healthy and, no debt, high savings rate. And we were starting to hit some stride in investing with a few rental properties. And I had some failed investments too. And my wife was like, you just spent money on this and it didn't work. It was like a Amazon automation thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's the brake in our relationship. I'm the gas pedal. So she is very supportive. She was very supportive then, but she of course is like, I don't know about that. And I just said, look, I have a vision of where I want to go, and I want to create legacy in our family, wealth, and I want to be able to not just make a bunch of money. That actually, that comes with the work, but I want to be able to teach our kids what is truly possible. And then the flip side of the coin is, I mean, we're great. I'm grateful because in the military, our college ends up getting paid for with the GI Bill and stuff like that. But all these people, I see a lot of other people going to spend $50, $100, $200,000 on an education to make $60, $70, $80,000 in a 9-to-5 job, which is totally fine for some people. But I was like, this investment in education is decimal dust compared to what I would pay to go get my doctorate degree, as an example.
Yeah.
And that kind of limits you and sets you on a very specific path. I wanted to explore the entrepreneur space. And I just told her, like, hey, we need to build legacy wealth, and we need to do it fast, because I have a clock, right? I'm going to retire from the military, and I do not want to become a GS employee. I do not want to be a contractor. I know nothing against them at all. I mean, they're wonderful humans serving our country in those roles. But for me, I can't sit behind a computer for 9 hours a day. It's just it's not who I am. I need to build and create. And I told her I don't want to do that, but I do think if we go on this path together, I will build something amazing and create exponential wealth and legacy for our family. It'll be a roller coaster, but I guarantee it'll be fun. She bought it.
That's awesome. I love that. I think a lot of times when people hear this idea, excuse me, of financial freedom, financial independence, they think it's all about money and, making as much money as you can. And for me, it's very similar to what you said. Like, yes, I would love to make more money. And I have this idea that, like, the more money I have, the more potential I have to give back. But beyond that, I think there's so much that comes from this idea of like freedom of your time, freedom of your energy to be able to put it into what's important to you, what brings value to your life, your family, being able to, be at the kids' soccer game, or, you know, whatever it is. And coming from the background of the military, we know that often, you know, we're not in control of our time. And so just realizing that there's this whole other world out there where we can be in a position to make those kinds of decisions, I think is really scary, but exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It
Can
looks
you,
different for us, though. It
it
looks different
does.
for us, right? Because we want financial freedom. I think a lot of people view that as like just, you know, financial independence, retire early kind of movement. Retire early means people are like, oh, I'm ready to go sit on the beach.
Yeah.
But
Sipping
I
those
think
Mai
for,
Tais.
yeah, but I think for us in the military, it's just having control of your schedule.
Yeah.
Not saying that I don't want to work or I'm not going to work. I'm definitely going to work. It's what I've done my entire life, but I want to choose what I work on and when I work on it. And I think that's the biggest draw for a lot of military folks to the entrepreneur world. We already know we're all hard workers. Like, we work to mission accomplishment. We don't punch the clock.
Right. We get it done, whether it takes 2 hours or 20.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So I think I'd like to circle back and talk a little bit more about your sort of journey into entrepreneurship. And, you know, can you tell us a little bit more about that? And sort of, you know, were there any challenges initially, especially still being on active duty? You've come a long way in the few years that you've been doing this. You know, what types of hurdles did you come across, and how did you overcome them? And I'm asking this from the perspective of, I think for me, like, I always had these ideas, but I didn't think that I could do it while I was still on active duty. And so I feel like there's a lot of things that I sort of put on the back burner because I just had this limiting belief that, like, I had to wait until I retired. So I would like to maybe save people from making the same mistake that I did and sort of putting things off, and, you know, understand that maybe there is a path where you can do both.
Yeah. Unique timing for me with kind of COVID along my initial journey, which freed up some space. But I was in California, and because I was focused on finding direct to seller deals off the MLS, off the market, and finding good deals, we have to do some level of marketing, sales, and prospecting.
Sure.
What was advantageous to me is I could get up at 3:30 in the morning and work as a 1 to 2 person show with like a virtual assistant from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. And that was 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. East Coast time. My market was on the East Coast. And then I could, you know, take a cut away at lunch and make some phone calls and move things along. And then I could work late at night on the administrative part of my business. And I did that for months, and it sucked, but it was necessary. It was a really necessary part of the journey, because I learned I wanted it so bad, and I was just willing to basically sacrifice anything else I cared about outside of my family and like my normal life to make it successful. So that was really probably the biggest challenges you see oftentimes on social media and on YouTube and all these places. You see the end result, you don't see the journey to get there. And all of these people who are successful have 100% put the work in. And what that work is, I think, can be underestimated at times. So that was part of it. I was on the West Coast, and my market was in the East Coast. The other part of it was I very quickly, because I was military, because I was not in my market, I had to leverage. I had to either leverage money, people, or time. And I didn't have a lot of time. So I leveraged some money when it came to education and marketing. And then I leveraged people. I started hiring very early on to get people in to help me move the business forward. And you can hire people on commission. So it's, you know, I think people get scared of hiring. There's a lot of ways to hire people. So yes, leverage was the kind of the other part of that helped me a lot.
That's awesome. That's really helpful for me to hear too. I think at the current place where I'm at with my own real estate endeavors, I'm identifying a lot of tasks that I don't think are great value trade for my time. But I'm still at that, like, oh, like, it's really uncomfortable to think about paying for a virtual assistant or, you know, someone to kind of take care of those things for me, because I haven't made it yet, you know. But I think it's really important for us in that entrepreneurial space to realize that, like, at some point you have to start paying other people to take the tasks that aren't driving the dollars away from you so that you can focus on actually building the business instead of being in, working on the business instead of being in the business. Right.
Right.
So yeah, I just recently read 10x is easier than 2x. Have you read that yet?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep, of
it's
course.
so good. It's so good.
And read Who Not How as well. It's a
I have it
great
on
book.
I have it on my desk. It's in the stack of the short list of books that I have to read, because I know that's what I need to do, but it's like changing the way that I'm thinking about it to actually do it.
One really powerful exercise that I've done multiple times is called Elevate and Delegate. It comes from Gino Wickman's book Traction, but it's a quad. At the top left, it says, I'm good at it and I like doing it. On the top right, it says, I'm bad at it and I like doing it. And then on the bottom, it says, I'm good at it, I don't like doing it, I'm bad at it, and I don't like doing it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got these 4 quadrants. The things you're bad at and you don't like doing, those are the things you've got to figure out how you can get somebody else in to do those. So that's one thing. Now juxtapose that with the tasks that you're finding are necessary in your business, list them out and say, like, what does this task equate to in an hourly rate? Like, what's the return on my time? So then you can start to identify what it might be raising capital, having conversations with people. Those are your high ticket tasks, but a lot of the administrative stuff, maybe you're good at it, maybe you're not good at it and you don't like doing it. Those are the things that you will just free up your headspace, free up your time, allow you to get focused on the stuff that really, really matters and moves the needle. One thing that I struggled to learn very early on in business was understanding what actual revenue generating activities were. Like, what are the things that truly move the needle? We have this desire for certainty in general as humans. So we go in to build a business and we want to build it perfectly from A to Z. I want marketing and sales to be built out. I want the whole operation to be built out. I want HR and finance to be built out, but that's not how the world works. Like, you have to work from bottleneck to bottleneck, and you need to, especially early on when you're bootstrapping something, you have to stay focused on revenue generating activities.
Love that. Can you talk about maybe 1 or 2 examples of some challenges maybe that you personally dealt with early on and how you worked through them?
Yeah, so I'll just give you some really common, easy ones that got me as well. Like, what's the best CRM, right? Customer relationship management tool. What's the best one? And I'm spending all this time and looking at pricing and capability. The reality is none of it actually matters. They all have a flaw, and the best one is the one that you'll use. It took me a long time to figure that out, but I wasted tons of energy on it. I wasted tons of energy on LLC creation and thinking way too much about that part of building the business. That's like very simple stuff that doesn't actually make money. It's necessary, but it just doesn't make money. Right? Go make some money and then focus on that stuff. LLC creation, building a website. They don't really, do they capture leads? Sure, but it's not as important as getting on the phone and talking to somebody who might be an investor in your deal, who might have a house they want to sell to you, who might be a good contractor to help you with rehabs, who might be a good property or project manager for multifamily asset. There could be a myriad of other things that actually contribute directly to making money. I just got mired down in a lot of the nonsense, like most entrepreneurs do. It took me a while to kind of get over that. And people told me this, just like I'm saying right now.
You still have to find your own way to that point.
Yeah. I needed the struggle, I guess, and maybe some ego or something. I don't know why I didn't listen.
I'm sure it plays into sort of what you were talking about before. Like, some of it is just a matter of like, you have to spin your wheels a little bit. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to kind of figure it out as you're going along, because that's how you build sort of that experience and resilience and calluses, I think, as you're saying, like, just to kind of get to the point where like you understand it now and you can give that advice because you lived it yourself. So
yeah,
like, what sort of initially drove you, besides that you were getting ready to retire, but like what really drove you towards this entrepreneurial pursuit?
When I think when I was younger, like a lot of people in my family were like, they did construction. I was never handy. Even my dad was extremely handy. That didn't come to me for some reason or another. But he could do construction work and make money. My stepmom, early in my life, got her real estate license. She never really got her real estate career off the ground, but it had been introduced to me in different kind of ways when I was younger. So it was like seated in my subconscious. It really was. And I thought about it often throughout my life, as far as even into 2008, as I listened to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I would have these conversations with people. And I was focused obviously on being the best Marine I could be. And I didn't really make time for it, but it was always seated in my subconscious. And I think when the time was right in my life, I kind of knew, hey, this entrepreneurship, because of the connection to time we talked about, owning your own time, deciding how and when you'll work. And not just that, but my effort actually equates to my return, right? Like in the military, your effort doesn't necessarily equate to a result in a lot of cases. So I was just so attracted to that.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets seated subconsciously early on. 2008, I listened to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I lived the housing market crash completely unaffected by it. I have no idea what's going on. I'm like coming off of a combat deployment in 2008 and PCSing to my next duty station, moving to my next duty station, listening to that book. I'm fascinated by it, but I really am not. It's just in my subconscious. And then I start to try to take action as I move the next time. I'm like, okay, I need to buy a house. I don't know why, but I need to buy a house. So I try to buy that short sale house. I didn't get it, kind of get recentered on my career again. And it wasn't until, and I just always knew I needed to do that. 2017, finally bought the first house. And as soon as I bought it, like just another level of belief hit. As soon as I saw as soon as I found this military community of real estate investors, another level of belief hit. Then I met Bill Allen through that and saw what he was doing. And I was like, holy cow, this guy's in the military and he's got these multiple 7-figure businesses. Like, I can do that too. So it was a lot of like belief, execution, increase your belief, execution. That was it was always there. I just didn't. It took me a while to actually go all in. COVID helped, right? Sitting around, maybe not for
we had
you.
a little more downtime than we're used to.
Yeah, you were probably much busier than I was, but I'm like sitting out in 29 Palms, California. We're like, I don't know, are we allowed to talk to people or not? And we're sitting in our garage just waiting to do something.
Waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of just waiting. So
I was actually stationed overseas when COVID happened at a medical research lab. And so we were very busy. But I was actually also on maternity leave because I had my second daughter, Zoe. We were in the hospital for her delivery when they announced that the NBA was getting shut down. We were like, what is happening? So it was definitely it's an interesting time for all of us, I think, regardless of what position that we were in. But I love what you said. You said my effort could actually equal my return. And I think that is so huge, especially for those of us that come from the military where, we're used to just working until the work is done. But I mean, you get the same paycheck, whether you're the superstar or whether you just kind of show up. And so I think that is huge for the people in particular who tended to be the overachievers while they're in the military, but feeling like maybe they didn't get all they should have out of that. Being able to now do something where the results that you get are, in some way directly related to how much effort you're putting in. I think that's a huge attraction for me as well, in the entrepreneur space.
And just to think about, I mean, I joined in 2004 at the height of, Iraq was going off. So there was a lot of, in spite of the bureaucracy, in spite of the, your results your effort doesn't necessarily equal results. And, the bad apple's getting the same paycheck as the good apple. there was a higher level of purpose in the military in the early
For
2000s.
sure.
And that carried on through, basically the end of 2012 as we wound down out of Afghanistan, and for a little while longer with some Middle Eastern issues. And I was an enlisted infantry guy, like on the ground in combat. So it was really easy to be focused and excited and feel the purpose behind it. It got a lot harder
As time went on.
after 2014, 2015, 2016, and then, COVID hitting. It's like, what are we doing here? I need something to work towards.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what do you think from your military experience, leadership, all of that? Do you think your time in the military sets you up well to be for success as an entrepreneur? Or do you think that there are potential hurdles for people coming from the military and making that transition into entrepreneurship?
I think there's a direct correlation to success. Very direct. I firmly believe most military people can be successful in business. Couple of things for that. There's these models and things that are inculcated into our culture, like decision making, as an example. We talk in the military a lot about the John Boyd's OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act. Right. We spent a lot of time working through decision making, working through contingency plans, working through, hey, if things go wrong, what decision to make? How do we solve the problem? So what I see is we tend in the military to be much faster, more effective decision makers. We can take in a bunch of information with imperfect information, and we can go, okay, here's the direction we're going. I think that's a massive advantage. Number two, and we're trained, right? We get a lot of training for that. So that, it's not like we're wired that way. Number two is kind of the ethical and moral standards we live to. Like there are things for us in the military, like it is just so important to us to do the right thing when even nobody's looking. And that is just pounded in us. And when you do that for 20 straight years, it becomes a part of who you are. Yeah. Right. So I think we just operate at a higher level in that sense. And then the leadership component, the opportunity to get exposed to people from across the country and have a chance to lead those people towards a common goal, really is like leadership is, there are natural leaders, but leadership is developed. Leadership is learned and practiced. And we in the military have had ample opportunity, especially if you've been around for a while, to sharpen that skill. So when it comes to getting people from point A to point B to a common objective, I think there's probably very few people better in the world than military leaders. So those things all correlate directly to business, regardless of, key performance indicators and some of the mechanics of the technical part of business.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think the one thing for me, maybe that was initially a bit of a struggle in my transition, is I was so used to somebody else telling me what the mission was that it took a little bit for me to kind of come around and, it was like, okay, you're getting out, you're retiring. What do you want to do? It's like, there's so many choices. I've never had so many choices before in my life. And so it took me a little while to kind of come around and figure out like what approach I want to take and what direction I want to go in, and figure out sort of where I see myself fitting in this new landscape. But I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. I think we're very well suited to be successful. I think that was a hurdle for me in terms of like, okay, like you can do anything. What do you want to do? It's like, wow, anything? Let me figure out how I'm going to narrow this down. But like you said, I think we have the decision-making tools and processes in place to be able to come to a decision in pretty short order. What do you do to find balance in all of this, craziness that you have going on, still being on active duty, taking care of your family, multiple entrepreneurial endeavors? Like, what do you have, like specific tools that you use or practices? Like, what do you do on a daily basis to kind of keep focused and moving in the right direction?
This is such a good topic. The number one question or statement I get is, How do you do it all? And I've had to put thought into that because obviously people think I'm doing a ton, which in my mind, I'm just doing what I love.
Mm.
And when I look at it, balance is in my mind, it's a fallacy. It's not true. It doesn't exist in the way I think most people would look at it. When we think balance, we think about a scale that's even, right? And we look at a scale that goes up and down. The reality is life is always teetering somewhere, and
Yeah.
you're almost never in balance. And it's almost like striving for a mythical thing that doesn't exist. I look at it differently. Our family unit is balanced. I work incredibly hard to be a provider in my family. My wife stays and she's the primary on kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are balanced as a family unit. That doesn't mean I don't spend time with my kids or I don't go to events and I don't do things. I totally do those things. But my role, what I what I set out to do is make sure my wife can continue to be down with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, I've got to provide and create legacy and wealth in our family. So I see balance like that. I also see balance over a longer time horizon. Will I be this way forever? Highly unlikely, right? Will I be willing and want to and desire and have passion to work like a crazy person? Probably not forever, but I'm not even 40. I've got a lot of good work ahead of me. And I feel like I want to take advantage of that time that I still do feel energized. I am passionate about it. So I look at balance over time. And being in the military, we yo-yo. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're
Yeah, like a
crazy. We're
typical
crazy.
deployment cycle. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
we're crazy busy. People can't even imagine how we're doing it all. And then all of a sudden we're off work for like a month.
yeah.
Right. So I think I've lived and been conditioned to that. My wife has been conditioned to the military lifestyle. And in order to do work crazy like I work, it's so important that I have a support system at home. The same way for us in the military, any military person who stays in for a career, like it probably does not work out for you if you don't have a strong support system in your family, which I did in the military. My wife's always been incredibly supportive of the craziness. And she is also supportive in the entrepreneur journey for me. So that's all really important stuff. But I don't think balance exists in a perfect world. And I think um, we have different views of what that is. Like I talk to my wife all the time. There are moms who work and they love working and it's healthy for them to get away and go to work. And there are moms who stay home. One is not better than the other. They just choose different paths. And like the one who stays home can be stressed out because the kids are stressing them out. Sometimes the one that goes to work might be like, oh, I can't believe you're like stressed out because you don't even have to go to work. It's like, I don't know about that. That stuff's hard. Like just staying home is like extremely hard. I couldn't do it. My wife's amazing at it.
Yeah, my
So,
husband was the one who stayed home during COVID with the kids because I actually had a lot of work to do. And yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. Staying home with kids is
so hard.
tough. Yeah.
24/7 job. It's just different, right? So balance for her looks different than balance for a working mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or my balance looks different than her balance. Like I want to stay home. I'm like, dude, I bet I'm running ragged. I just want to sit around and watch some football on the weekend. She's like, I need to get out of this house. Right. So two
Yeah.
totally different paradigms we're looking at. It just looks different for different people. And I think we've got to accept that and look at balance from a wider viewpoint.
I think that is such a great point. I think, you mentioned sort of like know thyself, like it's not going to be the same for everyone. And it's certainly not going to be that visualization that you showed of like the scale perfectly in balance. Like it just doesn't work like that in real life. But understanding that like in order to find balance, you first really have to know like who you are and what you need, what drives you, how do you find rest, how do you recharge your batteries. In our family, I'm the one who recharges my batteries by like being out and about. I love to like get together with friends and do something social, and like to me that's relaxing and energizing, and I, if I could do that all the time I would. But my husband is the complete opposite of that. Like he is a very like zen, relaxed, kind of like you said, like when he's working, he's working. And then when he's not, like he just wants to relax and like chill, watch a football game, do
Exactly.
something, relaxing, to him, like downtime.
Chill.
He's got to be away from people to recharge his batteries. Whereas for me, it's like the other way around. I don't know, like sitting around by myself is not particularly enjoyable, I guess.
Yep.
But I think, yeah, that's a really, really important point to recognize that like ultimately the first step is knowing who you are and what you need, and then figuring out what that's going to look like. And I think approaching it from like that family unit perspective as well is really nice to think about. Like, it doesn't have to just be, what works for me, what works for you, but like, how do we make this work together? I think that's great.
And I've seen incredibly tangible results from our different roles in our family. I'll give you one example. So my wife is day on, stay on. I'm crazy. I'm all over the place. I spend plenty of good quality time with my kids, but not like she does. And what I've come to realize, my son is 10, almost 11. My daughter just turned 6. And my son last year wrote a book about money and finance. I didn't prompt him.
Oh,
I was actually gone. I was on a 6-month tour down in Tampa, and my wife sent me this picture, and he literally had written an entire book about money, how it works, about real estate. It was like, that told me that what I was doing is working.
yeah.
My ability to just set a good example, I don't push it down his throat. We do some things with the kids to kind of educate them, but like, he's just watching. He's
Yeah.
seeing what I
Soaking it
do.
up like a sponge.
And he literally, not only did he soak it up, but he intelligently wrote it in a book that he wrote. And I was like perplexed. I was so proud. And it let me know that, hey, my balance doesn't have to look like everybody else's.
That's amazing. I love that. You mentioned your kids and kind of their getting involved with what you're doing. And can you maybe talk a little bit more about maybe your vision or your hopes for like as they continue to grow, like what that would look like
Yeah,
for
I think
for you?
first and foremost, I need to understand how money works in the world. So I do try to teach them that. So one example, my son gets allowance. He trades time for money. We talk about what that means. What does it mean to trade time for money? He does a few things and he gets a little bit of money. If he wants to buy something, say, oh, I want to order this thing off Amazon with my money, he has to write it on the board and wait 7 days. And in
Mm-hmm.
7 days, if
Okay.
he wants to buy it, we're trying to teach him delayed gratification and impulse control. If he wants to buy it at that point, he can use his spend money to do that. He has spend money and he has save money and he has invest money. Last year, we bought 6 units in a Midwestern town, and he had gotten a windfall from his birthday. And I said, what do you want to do with it? I said, well, I have an opportunity if it would be helpful and you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's like, oh, yeah, what is it? I'm interested. So we're buying these rental units. We're going to spend, months fixing them up. But when they come, if you put your $50 into this deal with me, I'll pay you $25 a month, an unheard of return. Nobody gets that kind of return. And he's like, I then see he's conflicted. He wants to spend this money on this thing
Some
and he
toy
won't
or
care about
something.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, Dad, I need to think about it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And a week goes by and he approaches me in this week. He's like, I don't know. I think I'm going to buy the thing. I just kind of laid off of him. I'm like, okay, man, just let me know what you decide. And the next week he's like, I'm going to invest in the deal, because I explained to him the $25 you get monthly adds up to this total amount of money every year. And you have to save half of it and you get to spend half of it. So look at all the times you can spend money, and then I put it in context of what you could buy, the things
Yeah.
that he likes. He decided to invest in that deal. It took way longer to get that thing stabilized, almost a year. And now he's getting $25 a month from that deal. And my daughter saw that. She's only 6. She's like, got,
How do I get in
48.
on this?
Yeah, she's got $48 in her piggy bank. And I'm like, yeah, she doesn't ever buy anything. She doesn't ask about it. She's like,
It's a
well, what are
natural
you doing with that
saver.
money? She's like, I want to get in a deal, Dad.
I love
So
that.
just
My
They
girls are
know.
3 and 5, and so we're right at that place where, like, I mean, I do try to be open with them, you know, if they're like, oh, can we go to they want to go to Chick-fil-A for dinner like every night. I'm like, okay, well, you know,
I don't blame them.
once a week. Sometimes twice right now because we have swimming lessons, but yeah, that's definitely my go-to. You know, but when there's things going on, or like if we're going to go shopping at Target, you know, we'll have a conversation before we go about what we're going shopping for, why, you know, how we can look with our eyes and, you know, see what's there, but just doesn't mean we have to take home everything that we like. And, you know, some really basic concepts right now, but we're definitely getting to that point, especially with the 5-year-old, where I'm like, okay, I want to start figuring out like how are we going to be intentional as parents to introduce these concepts of trading time for money, you know, having an allowance, encouraging
And they listen.
saving.
They
Yeah.
listen. Like it doesn't feel like they're listening. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not listening. Like I don't know if any of this is working. They are. I promise they are listening. When they come back to me and tell me stuff I've told them 2 years ago, it's like, holy cow, you guys suck everything in.
Yeah, all the good and the bad sometimes, but good. It's really encouraging to hear that, you know, they're how much they really are retaining and sort of applying on their own without a lot of pressure, just sort of exposure. So we're
We're
definitely looking forward to
we're
starting
we
that
are we are
process.
also we are also fully transparent. Like my kids see how much money I have in my bank account. They know what my net worth is. We talk about it. Like we like growing up for us, like money was taboo. Like nobody
Mm-hmm.
talked about money. Like it was like not it was like talking about politics, right?
Yeah.
We talk about money all the time. We talk about what it means, why we're making decisions to buy things, what we could buy, but we're not buying. Like I drive a 2010 Kia Forte. My son's like, why don't you go buy a Tesla? I'm like, I could, but here's why I'm not going to. Here's where if I can depreciate the asset using a section 179 tax write-off, when I'll buy it. I had a tax planning meeting with my CPA earlier this year, and we went through that. We modeled that based on
Mm-hmm.
what I thought my tax bill would be this year. And my son was a part of the conversation. He's like, so are you going to get the Tesla? I said, I don't know. Let's wait. We made too much money this year. Let's wait till the end of the year. We'll see where the numbers come
Yeah.
in.
Game time
And
decision to see which
yeah,
one
we'll
actually makes the
we'll
most
we'll run
sense.
the numbers and see if it
Yeah.
makes logical sense. And he's like in tune with that. He's like, well, what did the CPA say? You had that meeting.
I think that's so great. Just even just them understanding like who are the people on your team that you talk to that help you make these decisions, and that you don't have to figure it out all on your own, and that there are, you know, experts out there who can help you make the best choices to use your money in a way that's going to work the best for your family and accomplish your goals. That's awesome. I love that. So let's see, one last question before we wrap things up here. If you could give one piece of advice to our listeners today, whether that's regarding something related to, you know, mindset and overcoming challenges, or like a specific action that they could take today to kind of move the needle towards their goals, what would you want them to know?
That thing you're thinking about go do it. Stop thinking about doing it and go do it. It really is like in context of my military experience. This is an example I like to use. Like for us, we put a heavy pack on, we walk 10, 15, 20 miles. It's miserable. The whole time you're doing this really hard, challenging thing, your mind is like, you could just quit right now. Maybe you could roll your ankle, get in the medical truck. Your mind's trying to defeat you. But the euphoria of completing something really hard and making it to the other side and having that belief just opens your aperture to what's really possible. So it's the same thing in business. It's hard. There will be challenges. There will be obstacles. Go buy that house you're thinking about buying. Go invest in that apartment building you're thinking about investing in. Take the leap of faith, because if you don't actually do, you're not going to ever move forward. So the thing you're thinking about doing right now, go do it.
Love it. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk to the audience about before we wrap things up?
I'll be in San Diego. So if any of your listeners are in San Diego, love to see them come out to Flip Hacking Live, October 12th to 14th. We'll be talking about real estate. I love networking with people. So if they can make it out to that event, it's a great event. It's not that expensive to go to. I'd love to see people there with me.
Awesome. Hopefully a few folks will be able to join you. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your lessons learned with us today. Your journey is truly inspiring and a really great example of how taking action and investing in yourself can really have a major impact on the trajectory if you're not afraid to put in the effort. So, what is the best way for our guests to connect with you if they would like to continue to follow your journey?
I'm on all social media at Adam Whitney. You can go to 7ff.sevenfigureflipping.com/Adam. I'm on there. You can reach out to me there. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Adam, for joining us and sharing your wisdom with us today. We'll be sure to link all those in the show notes as well for easy access. And thank you to our wonderful listeners for tuning in to this episode and being a part of this community. If you found value in this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time.
5 stars.
Yes, 5-star review. Until next time, remember that your path to financial freedom and the life of your dreams might be closer than you think. Take that first step and explore your possibilities. Stay tuned for more insightful episodes. And again, thank you for listening.